Without further ado, I'm going to jump into this and we can kind of go and if it's a smaller group, please feel free to just interject at any time. And if you have a question or you want to, deep dive into something else more specifically, we can definitely do that. Like I mentioned to Jennifer, this is a bit of a kind of more generic, more introductory look at this tool H5P that we use in one of our platforms called Libre Studio. So without further delay here, let's get into it. Excuse me. So our agenda today, quite simple. We're going to look at, what is H5P? We're going to define that in terms of kind of what it might be useful to you as a tool in the various sort of initiatives you might undertake in digital learning or digital pedagogy. We'll talk then about Libre Studio, which is our implementation of the H5P tool. What makes it useful. Apart from just having the H5P authoring tools themselves, we actually wrap the entire authoring process, authoring platform with community tools, which we think improve, the outcomes for educators quite often. And part of this webinar is also a workshop, so hands-on actually building content and seeing what that's all about. And again, like I said, feel free to interject at any time with your questions. So very quickly, what is H5P? The base level kind of description of it, it's a tool to let you author interactive web elements or interactive HTML5 without writing any code. The elements or the assets or the activities, we'll call them resources typically, that you author. They have this interesting feature of being reusable and remixable just out of the box as you author them. And so that's really what H5P is. It's this ability to create, this really cool interactive media elements that are also reusable and remixable. So let's take a look at a couple examples just to kind of drive this point home. So the first thing we're going to look at here is a presentation. So something like Google Slides or PowerPoint. Um, Here we're seeing just the instructor view, if you will. So this PowerPoint has 4 slides. As we navigate through the slide, so as the student would navigate through the slide, the instructor would have had, text, images, and interactive assessments such as this one added into the slide itself. So the student can interact with it. They can see whether or not they're understanding the concepts, and it's all very, without any sort of coding. You can set this sort of thing up very, very quickly. And including things like feedback directly on the slides themselves and videos and quizzes and things of that nature. You'll notice students also get this sort of summary of their ability to comprehend the material in a way. And it's all formative. It's all for self-paced learning. Not to say that it can't be summative, but ideally it's for formative. It's where it works best. So adding things like being able to show the solutions and retry, um, built into the platform there. So that's one of the activity types. Let's take a look at another one. This is an interactive assessment. So this is mostly just that we can consider a quiz. So for this quiz, we have this chart. It's just an image in this case, but it could be perhaps some sort of interactive JavaScript, HTML chart of sorts. But in this case, it's just an image. The idea is the student engages that material, and then they're prompted with some questions that they have to attempt to answer. And this one is just a kind of I think 2 or 3 question quiz. And at the end of it, once they've interacted with it, again, they can retry or show the solution. And like I said, these are really, really quick to kind of put together. And those are just 2 examples of 2 different content types that can be built using H5P without any code. More details at h5p.org, h5p.com, but let's just continue to the next slide. So we saw 2 different types of content you can create. There are over 50 other types of content types that you can create as well within LibreStudio using H5P. The sort of things that you can create with it. So we're talking about, interactive learning activities, self-assessment, formative assessment, self-paced learning modules, simulations, games, tons of different sort of combinations that you can kind of create using the various types of content that exist. In the slides, which Delmar, actually, I can share it right now. I'll share the slides just in case you are interested in clicking on any of these links or you want to come back to the slides at any time. I put links to some of the relevant resources here, including on h5p.org. They have a kind of a listing of all the different activity types. So for instance, let's take a look at drag and drop. When we open that activity type, we're going to see examples, at least one or two examples of that activity type. Let's go to the last one in this case. So this one is just a, drag and drop the correct name into the under the flag, under the image in this case. And so, like I said, there's over 50 different types. You can mix and match. They're reusable, they're embeddable, they're very quick, require no coding. So hopefully that answers, the question of what is H5P and what can you create with it. Moving on, where can you share your H5P? So once you've created your H5P in LibreStudio, you can embed it basically anywhere that you can embed things. So in your LMS, inside your digital textbooks, including on LibreText, obviously. We also have a homework system called Adapt, and LibreStudio integrates into Adapt natively, so you can create those, you can create courses and assessments directly using the H5P along with some of the other tools that we have built into Adapt. You can embed, your H5P or H5P you find in Studio, on your website, on your blog, really anywhere. It's completely, anywhere you can embed something is basically what I'm trying to drive home. So if you can embed a YouTube video there, odds are you can embed an H5P activity there. And we'll actually demonstrate that once we build some H5P here. So going back to, why would you create with H5P? What we find is it's a very easy first step for folks or team members or colleagues or organizations that might be taking their first step towards digital learning, towards open education. Because we're talking about, in a lot of cases, very bite-sized, small form factor resources that are, again, very easy to build, very modular. We can start learning about, how to teach online, how to build these digital resources online, without too much overhead in this sort of tool that we that's available to us. The other thing about H5P, the tools for open education are built into the authoring platform. So as I build H5P, I'm also building open educational resources, OER. And that helps me, especially if I'm new to the concepts of open education, that might help me familiarize myself with those concepts a little bit faster and become more comfortable with it. And so for teams that are just starting out or trying to grow in numbers in terms of the amount of educators that are creating digital and open education, educational resources, H5P we find is a perfect tool for that. It's modular, making it ideal for collaboration. So what you'll see in LibreStudio is we have collaboration within organization, within units, and also across organizations. So you'll have, college A educator collaborating on resources with colleagues from other colleges, other institutions. It's a free and open platform. It has become more popular in the OER communities over the last few years. And so it's something that's been kind of tested and quite extensively and found to be quite useful in a lot of scenarios. And lastly, it's fun for your students when they interact with, instead of a static kind of multiple choice question, they can interact with something that's a little bit more has a little bit more pop to it, a little bit more interaction, a little bit more engagement. It's also fun for educators being able to take ownership and building these sort of elements. It's empowering is something that we hear quite often. So it gets them to kind of contribute more into the space, which is super important, obviously. And so that's why, at least the reasons we found so far, that anyone would want to create H5P. And so if there's no other questions about it, I'm going to talk about a little bit about our implementation, LibreTexts implementation of H5P called LibreStudio. So a couple statistics about Studio. We have over 1,000 educators using Studio today. That number is growing at about 50 educators per month. Those educators have created over 17,000 resources, 17,000 OER using our platform, and that's growing at about 300 resources per month. And there's roughly about 100,000 students every month that interact with the resources that have been created by these educators on this platform. And so this is a battle-tested platform. Obviously, it's super relevant to these educators that have used it. They've had success building, digital learning assets and resources using H5P for their courses. And we're pretty sure that you will also find the same sort of success here as well. And also, we bring up these stats just to kind of highlight that you're joining a community more than just getting tools to kind of build, to author something. So you're not authoring things in the void, right? You're kind of taking part of this community, and so that community, basically we help each other kind of improve the way that we build things. And so if you want to get started, you can create your LibreText account. I'm going to share the URL. Copy link URL in the chat if I can find it again. So you'll go to one.libretext.org, you'll register. Please make sure to use your institutional email address when registering. That way you can, we'll be able to verify your account much quicker. And that is essentially the steps. Once you register, your account will be verified, and then you'll have access to Studio, as long with also with some of the other tools in LibreText as well. And actually, I don't think I've shared this yet. Let me just share the URL to Studio as well, in case you want to poke around while we go here. So I'm not sure if anybody already has access to it, or if you're all kind of new to it. But I'm going to assume that perhaps you don't have access. So I'm just going to go a little bit slower in the way that I kind of build these resources, so we can kind of get a sense of, allow you to essentially ask your questions if you need to. But what we will be doing in this workshop is we're going to build a self-assessment activity. In the slides, there's a activity sheet, which I'll bring up in a second as well. This is a good sort of practice sheet with some sort of questions that you can, on your own time, once you do have access, you can kind of practice with if you're looking for content to sort of tip your toes in and just try to figure out how the platform works. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna recreate a static question to make it more interactive. We're gonna add some metadata to make sure it's we're abiding by OER practices, making sure that the resource that we create is discoverable, and that other people can find our resource in the library, in the Studio library as well. So in this activity sheet, what you'll notice is we have 5 questions that have been kind of put into this table format. If we open the links here, these questions are pulled from specifically this OpenStax book. So you'll notice this is the this is the format that these questions in this textbook are in. Very static, very text, not very interactive, and this is probably par for the course in your own courses, or in your own books, or in your own assets. And perhaps you're even wondering, if you've ever wondered, can I make this more engaging for my students? That's what we're going to try and demonstrate through this process. And so the question that we're going to create here in using H5P is specifically, I believe, it's the one about hats. Yeah, so question number one. This is a probability question, I believe. And so we're just going to just go ahead and copy and paste the values from this field or this table into H5P. Sorry, into Studio. So I'm just going to log out here real quick. So the first thing you'll notice once you get to Studio, you'll land on the home page. From the home page, you have the ability to kind of quickly search for various things, but you'll also see various examples of featured content built by the community. You'll see featured H5P, so these are the OER, and then you'll see featured collections. So these are collections of OER that have been built by other educators, and we'll get into collections in a second as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to click on login. And because I already have an active session, I'm going to be logged into my account directly. For you, once you log in, you'll probably be taken to your profile, which will look a little bit like this, which will have your information and any of the H5P that you have authored. In your case, if it's a new account, it'll be blank. And from here, what we want to focus on really is the new H5P button, which is what I'm going to click on here. Once we click on the new H5P button, we're presented with a form to essentially start authoring H5P. And specifically what we want to author. So again, you'll notice that there are 57 different content types, different H5P content types that we can create. Accordions, arithmetic quizzes, collages, charts, columns, presentations, and so on and so forth. Basically, any sort of activity type that you would want to create, you can pretty much create here. If there is something missing that you were like, oh, I wish that was an H5P activity type, you can always get in touch with us. We can actually build that out. And we love doing stuff like that because it means that we're building tools that are specific to our community as well. In this case, what I'm going to build is a multiple choice resource. So I'll just search for multi. I'll see multiple choice. I'll click on that. And from here, I'm just going to find my table of information again, and I'll just call this OE week 20. I'm going to give it a title that I can find later on. OE week 2024 MC multiple choice question 1. So that's just a title. That's more for administrative than anything else. But obviously it does matter for being able to discover your questions later on. The question text, I'm just going to copy this value here into the question field here and just clean up the styling. I'm going to make the actual question larger, in this case in H2. That way students know that is what they have to do. And then we have the options. So we have option 1 and option 2, and these are the values that are going to be available to the student when they're selecting their answers. And so I'm just going to copy these option values into here. And that is the correct option. What you're going to notice is as I kind of add these values in, you'll notice that underneath each option, I have the ability to add tips and feedback to the student. So in this case, we can have immediate feedback to the student or overall feedback. So if this was kind of a quiz with multiple questions, we'd want to perhaps add a range, 0 to 70. They did, give them this feedback, 71 to 80 or what have you, give them that feedback. So we can kind of control things of that nature as well. It's very robust in terms of the sort of feedback you can create. And so just like that, we've created our multiple choice resource. We're going to ignore all the settings at the top here and just select a subject for our metadata purposes. And everything else we will just leave as is for now and just hit save. And just like that, we have added our multiple choice question. So this is the activity. You can see the, the question text there itself, the question for the student, and the actual options that we added. One of them is bolded by accident here. Let me just get rid of that. Otherwise, it will bother me forever. Unbold that. There we go. And, just like that, we've taken a question that looks like this, right? Very static, very text, without any sort of real immediate feedback for the student, and turned it into something that does have, immediate feedback. So if I select, well, in this case, we didn't add the feedback, but if we had, it would give them, the text feedback, but at least they get the ability to continue retrying until they get the right answer. And of course, we can take this content now and embed this resource into our LMS or our textbook or wherever our students are learning.
Question about the feedback.
Sure.
Is that text only as an option, or is there audio or video feedback options?
It's a great question. I believe it's predominantly text. Let me just double check that here. So tip text message if answer is selected. So yeah, it looks like it's text based.
You could probably link though, right? You could link to
Correct. Yeah.
if you had a separate video.
Yeah. So you can probably embed something, for example, if it was a YouTube thing, or you can actually add a. Actually, YouTube would probably be terrible, but you can create a link there.
Okay.
As an example, yeah. So that's just the multiple choice question. Now, let's say we wanted to go a little bit further here. So we talked about remixing. So let's just touch on that topic real quick as well. I'm gonna go back into the library, and I'm just going to, from here, obviously in the library, I can quickly search resources that other people are creating. You'll notice again, nearly 18,000 resources in here. So we can search and filter by topic. So perhaps I'm interested in statistics. And we can also search and filter by the different activity types. So maybe I'm looking for, fill in the blanks, formative assessment essentially. So I can just kind of do a quick search like that. Let's see what pops up when we do that. And so we have this, looks like it's a fill in the blanks question. We can quickly expand this resource and see, the question itself, and even attempt the question or attempt the activity if we wanted to. And that goes for all of the different activities that might be shared in here. But let's say this is something that we really liked and we wanted to use and make it our own. What we can do is we can quickly find the reuse button. So if we just click into this resource and go into the resource page, we'll be able to see who shared this, who created it, the license that they shared it with, the activity type, and so on and so forth. If we wanted to make a copy of this for ourselves, we just find the reuse button here, and we can just simply copy the content, click on new H5P, and click paste. And so that just takes all that entire resource, that entire activity, and copies it into the form for us, including the activity type. And all we have to do really at this point is fill in the necessary subject field and hit save. And we've created a version of that resource that we can edit and make our own directly there. And it doesn't stop there. We can actually copy this into other assets as well. So for instance, let's say we wanted, we have this really nice YouTube video and we want to create a interactive video we want to add interactions into that video because we're using that video in our class. So I'll just search for interactive video. I'm going to give this a title. I'll add a video in this case. I'm going to copy and paste the YouTube URL. And click insert. From here, I'll be able to go to step 2, which is add interactions. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. I'm actually going to expand this so we can only see the editor. And from here, you'll notice on this video, we can start to add text, tables, links, images, and different interactions. So different questions such as true, false questions, multiple choice, drag and drop, and so on and so forth. And the way we do this, the way we add interactions is we just hit the play button and we just kind of go to where in the video we want to drop something. So in this case, I don't know, that's good enough, let's say. And in this case, so let's just say I want to create a new true false question directly here. I can specify how long this question, kind of shows on the screen for example. I can pause the video when this question hits, or sorry, when this time value is when the time is at that value, for example. But let's just go ahead and add something here. And you'll notice we have adaptability as well. So we can say that when they choose the right question, go to this part of the video. If they choose the wrong question, perhaps rewind and take them to that part of the video. So we have lots of kind of flexibility in terms of what we could do there as well. But I'm just going to leave it as just like this, just to demonstrate something real quick. So we're not pausing the video. It's just going to show up as a label that the student can choose to interact with or not. So we'll go ahead and give it a label, hit done. We can drag where this label kind of should exist. We'll put it right there, for example. And we're just going to go ahead and proceed to save this interactive video with that one interaction that we've added. So when I save this, it's going to create this video, and you'll notice, so it's going to bring that YouTube video, layer on top of it any of the sort of interactions that I've added just now, including that that multiple choice question, or sorry, that true and false question. So as the student, as I play this video, once it gets into the marker where the video is, you'll notice that quiz label icon is going to be popping up just like that. Now again, the video continues playing. This quiz button will hide once it reaches the other, the point in the marker where it's not available. But if I click on it, I'm treated to that question. And so it pauses the video behind it. I answer, and it tells me whether or not it gives me any sort of feedback that I would have had there. But as a student, I can continue there. And you'll notice, I don't know if it was kind of quick there, but you may have noticed that this star kind of lit up for a second. So if we go to that, the student also gets a kind of a tally of all the questions that they've answered or interacted with on this video as well. Just again, to get a sense of whether or not their their ability to engage with the material. And let's just go. Let's just take a moment here. So we've created a multiple choice question. We remixed an existing drag and drop or fill in the blanks question. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, again, copy this drag and fill in the blanks question that we essentially remixed from somebody else. I'm going to go back into my video, and I'll go back and edit. And again, in the timeline, just expanding this, I'll go to, I don't know, right there, let's say, and you'll notice the paste button. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste it right there as well. And now I have that that fill in the blanks question that I just copied. And I'm going to, in this case, this is a what's referred to as a poster. We can turn it back into a button, but my preference typically is to use it as a poster, because then I can pause the video in the background, take up the whole screen, and just have the student interact with this one resource before they continue watching the video. And so, yeah, what I typically do is I say pause the video. I'll round this up to something like that. Whoops. And yeah, and directly in here, so I can make modifications to this question. So if I want it to be worded differently, I could do that here. But I'm just going to go ahead and hit save now. And just like that, we've, improved upon our, our efforts here to create this interactive video by copying another question directly into it. So you can see that the modularity here. You can imagine working with multiple instructors, some of them creating the assessment, some of them creating the reading, some of them creating the perhaps the interactive material, um, and the community perhaps working in that sense. So outside of the borders of your own team, outside the borders of your own organization, if we were to kind of have a domain where we all kind of wanted to answer some of these questions and build resources for these questions, for these topics. This tool allows you to kind of do that at a very, very quickly and at a scale that is very difficult to do outside of the H5P tool itself. So again, we're at that time, the 110 time, and that's where our question is. And from here, the student would answer, and then they have the option to show the solution, to retry, or just to continue the video from there. And so hopefully that demonstrates, some of those, again, the modularity, the ability to be, to collaborate, and the ability to remix resources really quickly. One other thing I want to talk about, is there any questions before I get to pretty much the last thing that I have to demo?
I noticed that, like you said, you can put multiple interactions in one video. And I saw there was a little screen where after you answered it, there was like points. So if we were to incorporate this into Adapt, then there would be maybe point values that you could associate with completing each of the interactions. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely, yeah. So and I believe this is the case right now, or at least we're very, very close to it. But when we have a resource like this that has multiple sort of interactions, it's referred to as a compound resource.
Mhm.
And I believe these are scored accurately and integrated into the LMS gradebook accurately via Adapt. So yes, that would be the case.
Oh, okay. I see the note too. All right. And then would that be like for a student view, if like we view long videos and there's like 15 interactions, would that populate as 15 items in the gradebook, or would that be grouped and you could label this as, probability, statistics, homework video, and then they would see like 15 out of 15?
Yeah, I believe that's so it's at the kind of the
The
activity
resource.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the resource level. Yeah, so I believe you can do it both ways through Adapt.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I believe the default is that it's at the activity level. So you have that one assignment that's worth 15 points, and then so that would be going there. And I also believe, though, on the flip side, within Adapt, you can actually see at a interaction level this question, for example, probability of a six-sided die versus this question. You can kind of get that breakdown of where students are getting stuck, for
Right.
example.
Okay, it's really cool. So a lot of my colleagues use Edpuzzle, and this would completely be able to replace that, seems like.
Let me jump in here just one quick. There's one little bug that we're working on, and Yassine was going along that direction in these sort of composite H5P blocks where you have multiple questions. Adapt doesn't know how to read more than the first one. However, we are going to, in the near future, within a few months, make it so you can come in and do exactly what you're asking for. So you have 5 questions or 10 questions embedded into a video. It will export them and then provide them in some way, whether they're broken up or they are integrated, but you're able to dissect it in a different way in order to see the breakdown. We still haven't quite figured out how that's going to be working there.
Okay, that'd be perfect. That would like meet, I think, myself and a lot of colleagues' needs. And you said in a few months, maybe?
Yeah, certainly by the, I would say
Check.
spring sometime.
Okay, okay, I'll
It's
check back.
Yassine's part of that development team, as is the Adapt infrastructure. It will definitely be ready and tested over the summer, but most probably a few months before then.
Okay, thanks.
I also have I wanted to chime in because I've been using Adapt for my Italian courses this semester, and I noticed that students I had like question 1 and question 2, which was part of a one assignment, and a lot of the students are just doing the first one because they don't obviously scroll to look for the second part. So they get 5 out of 10, for example, instead of getting the full credit because they only answer with the one first question. Is that what's going is there any other solution to that you?
There are, and I'm talking on behalf of Adapt here, not Studio, which is obviously the topic of Yassine's talk. So I'm sorry, I'm usurping his presentation here a little bit, but the the like I said, because the composite infrastructure doesn't work very well with Adapt, because we have to dissect it in a slightly different way, we need to expand it so the students only have to submit the first question, and that's what's registered. That's why you have that issue. But we can make an infrastructure where when we bring in composite H5Ps, and it'll recognize that there are 5 or 10, and then we'll implement that into our completeness factor so that the students know that they have to complete them in the certain way
Okay.
that you have
So
there.
that's all my question was, that is it in the works or is it?
It is in the works, in the to-do list, and we've been talking about it for a while. It's just a few tricks here and there and some other technical issues that are not really worthwhile to comment on here, but we will have this done certainly by summer, certainly by the next academic year.
Great, thank you. And I have a question for Yassine. If you could please, I noticed that you just kind of once you remix something in H5P, how do you address the authoring part? I mean, I know that you have to fill out all that information on the left side, but I am always like in doubt when I get to that part. I don't know how to deal with it. If you could
Right.
give any kind of tips on that. I mean, how does that work? Are you the new author or you how do you fill that part?
Certainly, yeah. So when you find a resource like this, for example, you'll notice that this one is built by Raven.
Yeah.
It's not a great example because Raven hasn't added a license to this resource, but I'm just going to use it as an example again anyway. When I click on reuse and I click on copy,
Mhm.
and then I go to new H5P, and I just find the paste button at the top here.
Mhm.
I've just taken all of the H5P elements related to that resource built by Raven. And really the last thing that I have to do, the last step is just identify the,
Okay.
the subject of this. And that apart from that, I don't have to do anything else. I'll just go ahead and hit save here. And so now I've created a one-to-one copy of Raven's work. But you'll notice now I'm the author of this, right? I'm the resource owner. And so this is my copy of Raven's work, and I can continue, improving upon it or customizing it for my own purposes. Apart from that, I don't really have to do anything else. And so that's how the remixing works in this case.
Thank you so much. That really helped.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the other part that is some of the community aspect part that I'll mention, kind of ties into the remixing a little bit. As an educator, I know for me, usually when I find a good resource, and I'm just like, thank the author that they actually, put the effort and made this available to me. And it feels so nice to find that resource, right? It's one of the reasons why we're all part of OER and why we're so interested in it, because it's helped us tremendously, and perhaps at some point. I know the feeling, of finding a good resource is always nice, but finding a collection of good resources is is obviously much better. Imagine finding a curated set of resources built by, numerous folks that are interested in that domain. So one example I'll bring up here is Geology of California. So if you have any colleagues that are teach geology, especially of California, this might be of interest to them. Immediately what you'll notice about this collection is that it's by one author, uh, and that author has collaborated with other educators from other institutions. I believe they're all part of one system, the colleges here. But again, the ability to kind of collaborate across domains, across organizations is really crucial here, because the sort of thing you can put together as a collective is going to be much more valuable than individually kind of going off and building these one-off things. And so in here, obviously you'll notice that, a collection is basically a series of or sub-collections of resources. The resources can be built by the authors of the collection, or it could be built by anybody. Doesn't really matter. They can be organized into these sort of categories or tranches or sub-collections here. And as somebody who, might be interested in this domain, I can quickly kind of see what this question is about or what this resource is about. And again, I can contribute to this, right? I can ask to be a collaborator with them, or I can take the resources that have been shared here and use it for my own purposes if I'd like. And so that's, one of the community tools that we have enabled here. The collections, it's one way to quickly find elements related to perhaps what you're interested in. The other one is hubs. And so hubs allow us to aggregate content for organizations and communities. And so you'll notice that we have a few different hubs, especially in California, because LibreTexts is California based. For example, Chabot College, 14 members who have created over 2,000 resources, H5P resources in Studio. So that's a very, active community there. We can take a look at this hub and see the sort of resources that they're working on. We can see the authors of the resources. We can quickly, see the resources that they're creating. We can filter these resources. So if I was looking for, and I know Chabot does a lot of work in the Spanish OER section. Of course, that search doesn't return anything. But yeah, that's what a hub is essentially. It's a way to aggregate all the resources, and we're continuously improving upon what this is going to be about. But the idea of a hub is that it's this central point where all your community members can kind of aggregate your resources together and find out what everybody's working on and find people to potentially collaborate with, or at least at the very minimum, kind of observe and learn from. Again, it's not just about having the tools, it's about having kind of the community support to build the sort of things that need to be built. And I believe that was everything that I wanted to talk about. Oh, we didn't mention, so I didn't demonstrate embedding something. So just very quickly, I'm in a Canvas course here. I'm just going to add a new page. We'll call this page X1. We'll go into that page and let's just find, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be my resource. So I'm going to use Allison's resources again. In this case, I'll just find the embed button. I'll copy and paste this embed code. And when I'm editing, I'm creating my pages here. Heading A, I can create headings, I can create paragraphs, just like any other thing, but I'll just call this a heading here. And underneath that, I'm just going to find the embed code button. I will paste the embed code that I just copied over. I'll hit paste. It's going to embed it in there for me. And I'll just go ahead and save and publish. And now I've just added that resource, that interactive resource, into that page. And so students, when they open this page, will interact with this resource. Now, as the author of that resource, what I could do is any changes that I make on this resource, it's not like I have to, change it here and then copy it again over into the LMS, the page I just added. Any change I do here, because it's just an iframe, is going to be automatically reflected wherever I've embedded that activity. So it's not a, change it, download it, compress it or zip it and then upload it here. If you ever use some of these other tools, they make you kind of jump through hoops to update any sort of resource that you've made available to your students. That's not the case here. Anything that I embed, anything that I change, that embed gets automatically changed as well. So yeah, we talked about using the H5P. We talked about remixing it, taking it further. So we mentioned.
Sorry, can I ask a question about what you
Sure.
just did about the embedding?
Sure.
If there were Creative Commons licensing that required attribution, do the attributions follow when you embed with the iframe, or do you need to include the attribution as like a line right under there?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I forgot that's it. What you'll notice is under the reuse and write button, we're also going to have a rights of use. And so if the author of the resource had actually filled out the information like they're supposed to, that information is going to be populated here. And so we get all the attributes for the resource directly in here. We don't have to write anything ourselves. In the event that it's not there, then obviously there won't be any information in that rights of use button. But yeah, typically it's all ported over. So as I embed, I'm also attributing directly as well.
And then related question, but from the accessibility standpoint, since the example you showed has like a graph, if there were a linked table or you wanted to create a linked table, is that something you would do in the H5P platform and then it would follow over? Or if it's not included in the H5P, you have to like put it in Canvas. I don't know.
Yeah, potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on. So I don't think in H5P we have the ability to create. So you can create tables, but you can't really. They're not all that accessible. And so your options are, or they're not all that interactive. They might be accessible. And so your options are here. Let's just actually we'll copy this and then we'll see what our options are on the fly. So I've just copied that resource, clicked on new resource, pasted the resource, and from here, so we're using a column content type. What we're going to do is we're just going to add. So the way it works is we have an image, and then we have our single choice set. What we're going to do is we're going to add content. Specifically, I'm going to add. You'll notice that we have lots of options. Image, timeline, summary. Let's think. Let's add a table. And so let's say that was our table. I'll just leave it as is. I'm going to move this up so it goes table, and we'll remove the image. So it goes table and then question. I'll just go ahead, and I think this is also, what is it? Is it statistics? No, it's chemistry. So we'll go ahead and hit save there. And so now I have this table and the question. So this is a column content. It's another example of a compound content type where you can kind of mix and match various things. In this case, I have a table that includes the table headings. And so this is a little bit more, I suppose, accessible. But I guess you could combine the two, right? You can have the image and then maybe the table and then the question, just to kind of have the visual, the graphic chart, and then the actual data itself, and then the questions underneath it. Hopefully
What would
that
the screen reader say for that? Because it's iframe.
the screen reader, the fact that it's iframe doesn't really impact it too much. So we would just go through the various levels. In this case, it would treat this as a table because it is a table, and then it would read this part, and then it would read the labels for this.
Okay, and then for the image, if you included the graph image, you could also have alternative text and say graph of, data contained below or something.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I add another piece of content here, let's make it a image. So add the image. We'll just add any other image here like this one. So we have the alternative text that we can add here. We can say that it's only decorative, but that's most likely not the case because the question is going to probably be referencing it. And so, yeah, we have the ability to add the alt text. The other thing we could do, and something that some folks do, is they'll add an accordion. And so this is the, graph description, for example, the long form description. And here they would describe that data in an accessible format. I'll just add some text like that for now. And let's just move the question set underneath everything so it makes a little bit more sense. And if we take a look at this, we need to add the alt text. Okay, I believe I've updated it. Right, so here we have, the image, and then underneath that we have an accordion. So that would be the long description, for example, and that would satisfy the accessibility requirements in this case. It would just be a matter of the instructor essentially writing this in a manner that makes this accessible, essentially. Does that answer your question, Jennifer?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay.
Actually, I may put an addendum on that issue, depending upon if you're allowed to put tables that are recognized HTML table in that block, or if it's just a text. If it's just numerics without a table infrastructure, it's still not going to be accessible. The at some point, you get into the limitations of what the H5P technology is able to do without us being able to hack into it, which is possible, but has other issues to do. The adapt, if you use this within the adapt homework system, it has a primary question, and then you can have a secondary question afterwards for accessibility purposes. So if the primary question doesn't have great accessibility, and many H5P questions have issues with accessibility, you can provide a secondary technology in order to address it. For example, a question that has the raw text down in appropriate HTML that is registered for screen readers, and the students that need it can switch to that, and that's perfectly compliant with ADA requirements and such in order to have that. So in other words, not everything needs to be accessible as long as you have an alternative that is accessible to address it. But it's a beautiful question you brought up.
That one. Yeah, and we touched on this a little bit, basically going one step further. So yeah, you get your foot in the door, you start creating H5P, you have perhaps your colleagues also creating H5P. You have this nice little community where you're building, resources towards your domain. Where do you take it from there? H5 adapt is the next logical answer, and not just adapt, but also just the rest of the LibreText infrastructure. But adapt makes the most sense because you can start to do this sort of stuff that Delmar mentioned, having summative assessment, integration to your gradebook LMS, the accessibility alternatives, integrations with other tools such as WebWork, iMath AS, and so on. So it really, that would where, once you become a bit more of a pro and building your digital resources, you would probably take those next steps and use some of the more powerful tools there. And all this and that's the way that LibreText works. All these tools are built to satisfy a specific need, but also integrate into a larger ecosystem of tools very, very kind of efficiently, so that, you can start with some smaller stuff and work your way until you're comfortable with some of the more advanced tools and processes, if you will. Yeah, and that's really it. My information is there. info@libretext.org. I'll just add it into the chat. Is the email address that you may want to reach out to if you have any issues about accessing your account or creating an account. Joining joining the LibreText consortium. There's lots of benefits of that as well. But yeah, hopefully this was a worthwhile webinar. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Yassine. I learned a lot.
I hope so. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much. That was great. That was very informative.
Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Again, happy to provide any other information that you guys need at any time. So just feel free to get in touch if you need.